Are you recording, Dan?
Not yet.
Wondering.
All set, Matt.
All right, thank you. Terry, are you all set?
I am, thank you.
All right. And Chris?
Yes.
And Jim? Jim, you're all set for me to start?
I am, yes.
All right, so we'll start with call to order with the Pledge of Allegiance.
We have a flag here.
I pledge allegiance
Oh, nice.
To
to
the
the
flag
flag of the
of the
United States,
States of America,
to
to
the republic,
the republic
for
which
which
it
it
stands,
one
one nation, under
under
God,
God,
indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
for all.
Amen. Born and unborn.
Jim, that's better than the small flag that I have. So we're improving on Zoom as we go forward here, right? So we're going to call to order a budget work session for the town of Narragansett fiscal year 2021 budget with the town staff. Our budget work session tonight is going to be conducted on Zoom. As most of you know, the budget work sessions are generally informal. We have a lot of questions and the side conversations often break out. So we're going to need to keep that informality at bay tonight because it's going to be very difficult to follow the work session otherwise. So I'm going to turn it over to our finance director, who is presenting the information at a more macro level this year. She's going to be starting with the general fund and across the board changes to staffing that are anticipated for the next fiscal year. All our department heads are here, so I want to thank them all for being here tonight. And they're going to be available to answer specific questions about the departmental budgets, but they're not each going to be making a presentation. The roadmap that Jim Tierney had laid out, our town manager, for us in an email last night, is what we're using to sort through the budget. So that started with the general fund first, followed by enterprise funds, then capital, pension and OPEB, and then finally the special management funds. So as the council needs to address an item, I'll go down the list as I've been doing in our Zoom meetings to get feedback on particular budget items. And when we do that, just please identify yourself before speaking, so we can move forward. The budget work sessions are for the council to work through the budgets. There is no public comment during the work sessions. We will call on department heads as requested by the council members. At about the 8 o'clock mark tonight, I'm going to see, we'll be 2 hours in and we'll kind of put our heads together, see how far we've gotten, and then what we need to do to plan for May 13th work session date. So right now, I'm going to turn things over to Chris Spagnoli, our finance director, who's been spent countless hours preparing this budget for us. So go ahead, Chris.
Okay, thank you, Council President Mannix, and good evening to you, council members and fellow participants. Again, I'd like to thank all the department heads for all the hard work they did on getting their budget ready. I stated on May 4th, the town manager has met with them many times and made his recommendations on approximately a $1.8 million in reductions. So we'll just like Council President Mannix said, we will go over a general overview of all of the big items in the budget. So to start, we have salary and fringe benefits. They were all increased by contractual obligations. Those that don't have a contract yet, they were all increased 3%. That's 7% of the budget. Medical benefits were increased in approximately 8% and dental benefits 3%. So we'll start first with the general fund, the operating fund. I just want to reiterate from May 4th that the non-discretionary funds are 91.6% of the budget and discretionary is 8.4% of the budget. Summary of revenues. They're very conservative this year for the 2021 budget. Again, because of the COVID situation. We have zero use of fund balance for the operating budget. There's the 4% maximum increase to the tax levy. And this increase is primarily to begin to restore our unassigned fund balance to the general fund to a level that's fiscally sound. It's recommended to also to increase rental registration fees from $85 a month to $120 a month. And this increase would be annual $93,905. DPW recommended adding the recycling coordinator to the general fund because that grant has gone away from the state. But this would increase revenue about 50,000 but the expenses are about the same, so it really would be a wash. And it's also recommended to increase the payment in lieu of taxes and the administration fees for water, wastewater, and beach. Those haven't been increased since 2013. So I thought it was time to look at those again. Is there any questions on the revenues yet, or just, do you want me to keep going for the general fund?
Good, keep going.
Okay, expenses. So the total decrease from department to manager was $1.01 million. There was general increases and decreases to lines to reflect historical data and expense amounts. We reallocated some budget items to account for them in a more accurate way for state reporting compliance. We increased the solicitor up about $50,000, $55,000, just to reflect what a lot of actual costs. It was budgeted a little low in the last several years. There's an increase to the town clerk's contracted services. And she can explain that a little more. It was minimal, $4,700. An increase to tax assessors, the sinking revaluation account. It was at 50,000. We bumped it up to 75,000. That would more align with what we're going to need for the next revaluation. It's quite expensive. So information technology, he added request to add one FTE, which would be frozen until January 2021. And that's actually creating a savings in his budget because he cut the part-time wages out and many professional service fees. He had a little increase in licenses and dues. We also recommend replacing the planning technician and community development to keep that frozen until September 2020. That would be about a $24,000 savings. We decreased a police part-time position. We added fire is requesting 2 recruits. That would actually equal 1 FTE over the year. So they're expecting some retirements coming up rather soon. So he requested 1 being hired around September and the other being hired around April. So although it's 2 people, it really would be, the cost would be equivalent to 1 full-time person. And that would be ready to get people ready for these retirements. I would like to add a part-time fire inspector. Also, that would be frozen until January 2020. And that would help with going out for second inspections for fire and possibly bring in more money, revenue to the general fund. There is a potential change in Parks and Recreation clerk to a deputy director. There's a need for that, a more high-level position, but that is subject to contract negotiations. Again, the part-time coordinator to the general fund, I've already talked about that. A decrease from this in the school transfer from 1.38% to 1%. And we're talking about a decrease in the transfers to Middlebridge and the land conservation to be 0 for this year. And there's an increased transfer to the library per the library board's submitted budget. They were asking for $841,103. And there's a decrease in transfers to OPEB for the 2019 valuation and the actuarial determined contributions. We have the last one for that is the library. We had several meetings with the library leadership to discuss proposed library budget for to gather a level of awareness and understanding Several suggestions were made and some concessions were also made. Their revenue, again, they're asking for $841,103 from the general fund. There is a slight decrease in state aid due to the decrease in actual expenditures in 2019. And as far as expenses, they have projected an increase in salaries of 3% to go along with the general fund. And they had a reduction in building repairs. They reduced it from $40,000 to $15,000. That's what I have for the general fund.
In terms of the staffing portion, I just want to go through that. You have 2 probationary firefighters that would be new. Right?
Yes.
And you have, I just want to summarize this, a part-time fire inspector that would be new.
Yes.
And then an IT, someone to help in IT, which would be new.
Correct.
The person to help in IT, obviously in this environment, becomes probably even more important. There's been a lot more work by that department. And the one thing I did want to talk about though was some of the positions that we have had people leave. So Tony Santilli's resignation under building inspector, could you just walk us through what that cost is right now and what potential savings we could have there?
Okay, so for the building inspector right now, that's a split position. So I'll just be talking about the general fund side, which is probably 2/3. So for that whole salary, we're looking at approximately $104,000. That's what's in the budget right now. We could definitely reduce that. And it would be approximately 26,000. Again, we're just looking at the general fund side. Per quarter, if you want to divide it by 4. So if you held it to September, it would be a savings of about $26,000. If you did it till January, it'd be 52,000, et cetera, et cetera.
So on that point, I know that Jim's talked a little bit about sharing services on there. Right now, we voted as a council temporarily to be using the state for that. So there'll be a little bit of a cost associated with that, but it's nothing
Right.
compared to the 104. So I just want to see what the council members would think about if we divide that 104 into quarters. If like we looked at December 1st, we could reduce the budget for the building inspector from 104 to 52. Jim, do you have any commentary on the state? And then obviously your search is just beginning for a new building inspector.
Correct. We do have applications for the position, but we don't plan on moving forward with them until we can interview them in person. They are qualified candidates. Currently, we're using DBR, the State Building Officials Office, and for $75 an hour and some travel costs, they're conducting all the building official duties for the town. It's been going smoothly, but we do have to look forward to when we start to address the changes in the bulk zoning ordinance. And that could be quite cumbersome depending upon whether or not we have someone in community development still working on it and someone in the building inspector's office working on it. But right now, it's working with the state. And we are exploring all options as far as finding perhaps another community that would like to share a building official similar to Richmond and Hopkinton and some of the towns and cities up north do that. Different views on it, though, when you speak to different professionals in that field. But all options are open at this point. And I think it will be wise to reduce it based on several months' salary. I do think that's wise, right?
All right, so it's 26,000 per quarter, so we could reduce it by 26, thinking about a fall hiring, or 52, which is a January hiring. So I'm going to go down through the council members to see if there's any appetite for that. I'll start with Mr. Lima.
So yeah, I mean, we have applicants. I know there's towns that co-share building inspectors. So I definitely would like to look at that avenue. I mean, if we can reduce that portion by 40, 50, 60%, and we're not paying benefits, we're not paying a retirement plan. And you take that salary, obviously, you know, that Chris put forward there. If you take that over a 10-year period, that's $1 million. I mean, and that's huge savings for the town. So it's a matter of finding the right individual that can do that job. I know in a lot of communities, it's 3 days a week, and then the following week, sometimes it's 2, and then 3, and they rotate it out. So I'm definitely interested in looking into that. If we can save money on that aspect for the town, I think it would be a great asset for us to look into that.
Without violating anyone's privacy, it was looked into with one municipality, and the person in the position was not interested in doing it. I'm continuing to check with others.
Right, so we could reduce that perhaps 50%. Patrick, Mr. Murray?
Yeah, well, if we reduce the activity of the building inspector's office, we have a backlog, I'm sure, of permits and work that people want to do, which, you know, before this pandemic came in, we were doing, I don't know, $35,000, $40,000 a month in revenue from that office. That's one of the offices that actually makes money and generates revenue. So I think we need to take a hard look at that and juggle those numbers around. You know, we slow that office down, we're gonna lose revenue, basically.
So you wouldn't want to reduce that. Remember, Tony's salary was high though, Patrick, remember? He was,
Well, I mean, it's, you know, if we can get somebody in there to keep that, you know, those permits and that office on track, I mean, if we can save a few dollars, that's fine, but I just don't want to see us, because we're bogged down now. I'm sure we're behind. I have no idea what the stats are, but maybe Jim can pipe in and let us know how behind that office is. And I mean, if they're all caught up, then we could probably back down a little, but there's planning meetings that are, I mean, you know, everything's a mess. So I think you may be losing money if you slow that office down. And somebody can crunch those numbers.
Mr. Pugh.
So I'm not really interested in the small savings from doing a shared resource. Based on the way kind of Narragansett is composed with our wetlands, with our new ordinances, college rentals, the investment properties, I feel like this position is one of the more important positions in town. We have applicants that are interested in it that, you know, I'm sure are high quality applicants. September, you know, I'd be open to maybe September, but I think we need to have that as a full-time position in town. That's my opinion on it.
So would you be open to reducing it by the 26,000? 1 quarter.
That would be would that be September, starting into September?
Yeah, that'd be 1 quarter.
I'm open to that. You know, I like to see what everyone else thinks, but I'm open to at least discussing that.
And I went out of order, sorry. Ms. Lawler.
No worries. Jim, how long are we able to use the state building inspector? Is there a limit?
Right now, no, it's indefinite as long as we stay. We have to give them short notice, very short notice. I believe it's 2 weeks or 20 days. I'm not sure which, but they can provide the service indefinitely. But the quarter, the 25% of the salary is based certainly on a higher salary than someone that's coming in, most likely. But I do agree that we probably shouldn't keep it unfilled for too long, especially with the focus on the bulk zoning, because that'll be a time-consuming project, I think.
So Patrick asked a question I was going to ask as well. Tony's been gone since April 1st. Is there a backlog, or how big is it in the department right now?
When I spoke to the office Monday, the DBI SBO is keeping up with them, but summer's coming. And we don't know what the building will be, the permits and COs and things like that that'll have to be done, and plumbing and electrical inspection sign-offs. But
Yeah.
so far, the state building officials office has been signing off on them.
Yeah, because it's my understanding that this department is one of the busier departments that we have in town. And to Patrick's point, it does make us some money. And with the changing in zoning that we're looking at, I think it's going to be, I don't know that we'd be sharing would help us out, because I think we could potentially lose some money. I also see with the zoning changes coming, hiring on a bunch of more of the assistants, the part-time people that work in zoning who actually do the enforcement. So I'm interested in more hearing from you, Jim, what you think you want to recommend. And September is a reasonable time. It'll give you time, as you stated, to be able to face-to-face to interview people, which is really important. So I'd be willing to take a look and say start in September, short period of time.
Well, as soon as the doors are open enough for a person-to-person interview, we will interview the candidates. And if we find a qualified candidate, there's even several options available with the candidates that have applied, which I really can't get into. But but no, I think someone in that position is essential in any capacity, no matter whether they're a contract, temporarily, state building official, or one of our full-time employees. But it's an essential position.
So really the question we're asking here is, as we were talking about with the fire department, holding off on hiring until September. That's really the question we're looking at right now. Okay.
We could, unless things could change, but right now it's going well, and we could get by with it. If we had someone in place to go in right at that time, yes. But we also have to face, if we get a good candidate that accepts the job, perhaps because of the difference in pay for a starting employee and someone that has tenured for many, many years, they may not wait if you go to offer them a job. I think we'll know a little bit more, unfortunately, a little bit more after we interview the candidates.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, so it looks like there's consensus to reduce that from 104 by 1/4 by the 26,000. So we'll reduce that, Chris Spagnoli, from 104 to 78. All right.
Yeah, Matt,
Yes.
I had one other thing, the rental registration that was mentioned going from 85 to 120. I know Jill wants to see tax relief for year-round rentals. Most year-round rentals, been my experience, are not 5, 6 bedrooms or 4 bedrooms. They're usually 2 or 3 bedrooms. I think we can kill both birds with one stone and start charging by the bedroom. Right now, if you go to 120,000 per unit, make it $30 a bedroom. I mean, it's everything spelled out in the vision appraisals report on each house. So it wouldn't be a stretch to change that. So year-round residents, year-round rentals who have less bedrooms would be taxed. Well, the registration fee would be lower than the summer winter rentals, which are 4 to 6 bedrooms. It could be $30 a bedroom, $40 a bedroom, whatever, you folks decide. But that's one thing that Tony and I discussed with Tony at one point. That's all.
Right. So, but actually, probably a good time to have that conversation right now, Chris. You had increased it to 120 in this budget from 85, correct?
Correct.
And that would bring in how much more revenue for the town?
It was 93,000. 90.
So we would,
Can't find it. It's
yeah,
about
90
93,000.
93,000. So we would have to Patrick's point, if we did it by bedroom, obviously that conversation we can't have here, but we
Right.
could, knowing that, right, because when we do the budget, we still gonna have to vote to increase the rental registration fee. So when we vote to increase it, could we do that by bedroom with thinking an average of a 120 as a fee? That's an approach. We could also increase the fee if we want to increase revenue, which would be save taxpayers money. But Patrick, I think that's a good point. And what we could do is, in this budget, the average rental registration fee would be X, whether that's 85, 120, or 150. We got an email imploring us, I think, to go to 385. But I think, so let's, so that we would have to vote on it. Everything in this budget, we eventually have to vote to allocate those funds for any of these things. We're going to vote. We have to approve the building inspector that is recommended to us as a department head by the town manager when that comes along. I'm going to start with I'm going to just go in the same order to keep this, because this is hard. The work session is going to be hard to do because, as you know, it's much more informal than most meetings. But I guess, Patrick, in this case, are you comfortable with the 120? Would you like that average to increase, or would you like the 85? Let me start with Mr. Lima. I'll just go in the same order. Mr. Lima, why don't you go ahead first? Any thoughts on the average fee?
So if you're gonna put an average fee per bedroom again.
Not per bedroom. No. We're not
Just
doing that
average fee.
conversation now. Average fee. We can't, that's too in the weeds. We can vote on per bedroom.
Okay,
We can vote on however that wants to look,
Right.
whether it's a flat or fee. But right now we have 85, 120 is recommended by the town. We could go higher than that, stay at 85. We know what the 120 brings, 93,000 more in. So do you have a thought on that?
well, I believe the rental registration should go up a bit.
Mhm.
My concerns are this. We have places that rent multi-units to people. And most of those people, again, are on the fixed income side. So as we put a fee up, the landlord increases their rent, which they're probably already up to their eyeballs trying to pay that. So if there's a number that can be worked with these year-round multi-units, that they would pay what I call a flat fee. So in other words, they would be in a flat fee scenario of so many units, flat fee, 3,000, 4,000. If you calculated it out with the new rate, and it came to 3,800, they would be at the 3,000 rate. So we would try to help them a little bit. So again, they're not increasing it on those year-round people who do live in town, support the community, spend their money here, and are just looking to live here. So whatever the fee is, I don't have a problem with it. You can raise it to 120, you can make it 150. But I think there's a lot to look into this with multi-units, pick a number, and what we can do with them. Because again, going through what we're going through right now, we're going to have some hard times on a lot of individuals, and we're going to need to be fair across the board. But I do believe rental registration fees can go up. So I'm for a 120, I'm for a 150, I'm for 100, whatever this council decides.
Well, but the recommendation from the town staff was 120. Do you have a
120 is
number?
fine.
All right, and then on that blue sheet, maybe you and Mr. Murray can get together on the more details of that for us down when we want to implement.
Add on that.
That's fine. No, we're not done yet. We
Okay.
just went to the first person. So I'll go to Mr. Murray in terms of the actual, just what the average would be.
Yeah, the average is fine with me, but to Ricky's point there, a lot of these multi-units are 1 and 2 bedrooms, which again, at $30 a bedroom, a 1 bedroom, instead of charging a 1 bedroom unit $85 as you do now, it would at the 120, at the $30 a bedroom, it would be $30, and that property owner would be saving $55 a year on that 1 unit. So I think the bedroom kind of, takes care of all issues. So, but I'm good with the 120.
All right, Mr. Pugh.
Hi, I'd actually like to see that number, that average number, however we go about doing it, be more at something like 150.
Okay.
I've thought over the years that $85 registration fee is incredibly low. So I know it's a big jump to go to 150, but I think it's past due. So the average of 150 is what I'd be looking for. I do like, I know I'm going to talk about how to get there later, but I am also for the per bedroom fee. So if we were at like $40 a bedroom, it seems like that would maybe get us to that average of 150. But we'd have to look at the makeup of the units and the number of bedrooms across town to really know.
Ms. Lawler.
So I want to throw something else out there too. We're all trying to, we had a great presentation by the school committee the other day. What if we were to go ahead and have two different rental registration, the rental registration of year round and one of seasonal, and forgive the year round rental fee totally, and then increase, maybe the number Jesse threw out, 150, maybe 200 for seasonal rentals. That way it would encourage, the points that Rick made are really good ones, encourage people who are living in these smaller places. They won't have to have their landlord increase their rent for a rental registration fee, but even a small amount might be able to helpful. I don't know, Chris, if we can do that or not, but.
I would have to look at the numbers. I mean, revenues are going to be tight next year too, so we would have to look at the numbers by the units. I don't have that data in front
It's
of me.
about 1/3 that are year round of the total number, the 2,700.
So if we could somehow make that money up in the seasonal and give the people that are year round a little bit of a break, that'd be something I'd be willing to take a look at as well. Come out.
I like the idea of the split. I like that. It's a good way to attack that. As splitting doing a year rounder gets a lower fee, a year round rental, and because we know that goes on, and that would encourage maybe a little more of year round rentals. So yeah, that would be another way to go if we were policy making wise. When that comes up, we'd have to say, okay, if approximately 1/3 are year round, and whatever that number is going to be, then the other number for the 2/3 is going to have to be Y, right? So it's going to be X and Y. So, I'm surprised, but I was at an average of like 100 because that's what we said we were going to do last year, and we never actually did it. But it sounds like consensus wise, we are probably at 120 right now to kind of take the town's recommendation on it as an average. We have two 150s, I'd say 100, but I think it looks like it's 120, and that was the recommendation. So we wouldn't be adding anything, but we could revisit this when maybe we run some numbers. So Chris, we're going to leave the rental registration average alone, but obviously there's going to be a lot of policy making probably in the summer and fall on this. But for now, looks like it's a consensus just to keep it at the 120 average rental registration fee. All right.
Okay.
So a couple other positions that you'd mentioned, you talked about the recycling coordinator, but you said that the grant money offsets the salary on that. So even if we started tweaking that, we wouldn't save anybody anything if we reduce that position. Is that correct?
Right, that's correct, yeah.
So I don't know if that conversation needs to go any further. We had, what else do we have? We had the town solicitor going up. So the town solicitor went up. We were at 120 was kind of a flat salary we have for the town solicitor. That's 90 for our main solicitor, Mark Davis, and then 30 for zoning and planning. And then we budgeted another, I believe, 25,000. Is that correct, Chris? For
Yes, that's it.
litigation?
That's not in this number though. That's in a different, that's in.
No, I know from last year,
Yes, yeah.
Okay. And so, but we're going over on that number. We've had a lot of OMA, APRA complaints, petitions. We've had different people filing different things. And so those people cost the town money. Okay. A lot of these frivolous things that get put forward by people, who have put these forward and stirred people up. And we've seen a lot of time spent by the solicitor and the town clerk on that. So that is wasting taxpayer money. So that's why the recommendation on the solicitor though is to go to 175. Do we have to go that high? I just want to, but before we get to the council, I just want to see Chris and Jim weigh in because their litigation expenses, they're not 55,000. It looked to me like they're more like 30, but go ahead.
Yeah, in 2019, the actual was, was about 160,000,
Okay.
about 40,000 over the budgeted. And 2020 this year, right now, we're at 164,000 right now. So
Okay.
you know, have more of an idea of what's been.
So the recommendation, Jim, from you is 175 for that budget?
That's correct. It's accurate
Yeah, okay.
based on past uses. The 120 prior wasn't enough. It went 40 over that, so.
Right, with 120, but we did have 25 built in for litigation, so it really was 145, right? So yeah, we're going to 175. Mark,
20
is Mark out there? I want to make sure I'm not speaking out of turn. I could be wrong, but I think we had 25 for litigation.
under the, for the council.
Under
Hi,
the
this is
council.
Mark.
Go ahead, Mark. Yeah.
We, I believe there was 25,000 sitting in the town council budget, separate and apart from the solicitor budget for litigation or for
Correct.
legal related. Yeah. Last year.
Mhm.
So last year there was a total of 120 in flat fees, which, as you stated, is planning, zoning, municipal, district court, and then general solicitor activities. That's 120. And then, of course, this year we had litigation expense, quite a bit of it, a lot of APRA activity, a lot of open meeting act activity, and some petitions. So we exceeded the total of the 120 plus the 25, 145. And as you know, we have 2 or 3. Well, we have a couple of lawsuits that will be combined, and then we have a couple of other big matters that are hanging out there. So I think litigation expense could be higher this year, 2020-21, than it was last year.
So Chris, just on this, if it goes to 175 in the solicitor, do we eliminate the 25 that's in the council? So I'm trying to look for savings here, but I'm not sure. Do we leave the 25?
This year, let me just look at that for a second.
Yeah. This is on page 4, everybody.
Yep, 304. Yep, very good. Oh, no, I was actually looking at the 25 for the town council budget, which is page 3. Yes,
Yeah.
yes, you could eliminate that. Over the years, it doesn't, it really hasn't been really tapped into. It all stays in the solicitor line. So you could eliminate the 25,000 out of the town council budget.
Because
leave
in
the
the
other
town
20
council, that's a discretionary amount, and we put it in that way last time. We did 120 and 25. So in this time, we're just going to put it all in solicitor. So we're taking the recommendation to go up 55,000, but we would be able to take 25,000 out of the town council line item, which would be a little bit of savings tonight. Is that correct, Chris?
Correct.
Okay. All right, I want to make sure everyone understands that. So we would be leaving on page 4, the 175 in solicitor, but the budget for the town council would come down 25. How does, it's kind of, this is frustrating because a former council member like Mike Moretti filed a very voluminous APRA request for information and emails that he already had access to. I mean, this is how wasteful some of these things have been. And I just think the public needs to be aware of the waste that some of these people have put on us. But Mr. Lima, are you okay with reducing the town council amount 25,000?
Yeah, I have no problem, as long as Christine is comfortable with it. We'd be taking out 50203, is it? We'd be taking
Correct.
that, and we'd be moving that to the 50201,
Yes.
right? So, yeah, I'm fine with that, as long as there's enough there, because let's just state the facts as they are. We're gonna be in the court quite a bit until another election. And then I'm just gonna state this, after the next election, you're gonna be in court again. Because if people get elected and people in this town aren't happy with the next election, you're gonna be right back to where you started. If people think that people are just gonna sit on their hands and let X amount of people continue this and think that they're gonna sit back, it's gonna be lawsuit after lawsuit after lawsuit. And this will probably continue in this town until probably I'm not here, but I'm fine with the money.
All right, Mr. Murray, so this is, the 175 is a $55,000 increase to reflect what we've talked about, but then we would take the 25 out. And you may recall when we did this, when we were hiring Patty O'Neill and Mark Davis, how we set this up. So the 25,000 that was in the town council, we're just gonna take that out, because that would mean that the solicitor budget would be 200. So are you okay with that?
Agreed.
Okay, Mr. Pugh?
You're muted, Jesse.
Sorry about that. It's good to get these numbers in terms of cost, what's associated with these lawsuits. Because, a lot of people in town kind of wonder what the expense is for these lawsuits. It's unfortunate because, clearly some of these lawsuits are not frivolous. If they were, they would have been thrown out by the judge, and the judge hasn't thrown out at least that library lawsuit. And if the OMA violations, that's something that could have been avoided by the council, but that's cost money as well. So, there are repercussions for what this council does, and not all the lawsuits are frivolous. So we can see that. Getting back to the question, yeah, we're going to need that money, at least through the election. After that, things may change, but for now, I'm fine with designating that and changing that.
Miss Lawler?
I'm fine with its change.
Okay, so Terry, Chris, that's gonna be
Chris.
the reduction. What did I say? I said Chris. that's second.
25,000?
Or did I call you Karen? I moved Karen Hagan. We've got, reduce the town council by 25,000. I think that's accurate. And I just want to make sure, Mark, you think that makes sense as well, correct?
Yes, I think that's more than enough.
All right, great.
One item, I just let's not forget, I'm assuming that the professional services in the council would be for the additional legal services of Mr. Augusta.
Yes. Yes.
That
Thank you.
stays alive. That
Yes,
stays
thank
alive. Yeah. All right, just the firefighter increases, if any commentary, if Chris, you said it was 2 probationary firefighters and a part-time fire inspector. Do you want to just give what the dollar value was of those?
Sure. Actually, they're calling them recruits, not probationary.
No, I'm sorry.
That's okay. And then there's a delineation because they won't be, the chief can actually expand on this a little bit better, but they won't be the same status as a probationary. They won't be guaranteed a job, but say the people don't retire, then we don't have to go through the whole rigmarole as you would with a regular fire person. So the fire is on page 27. Just gonna flip around here for a minute. So if you look on the on fire on page 27 and the 50103, that's the temporary wages. So for the both of them, it would be $47,008 for their salary. And it would be exactly, hold the phone. That's on a different, I have a big table over here, sorry. I look at the salaries. Two recruits would be 47, and then benefits, about $100,000 additional with uniforms and then the health benefits and salaries and all that. Both of them come up to an additional $100,000.
is that $100,000 for the two or 100,000?
For the two. Yeah.
Okay, so
for both.
47, and then you add 53,000 for OPEB and benefits,
And uniform.
uniforms and all that.
Training,
Okay,
yeah, and all that other stuff that's goes along with them, a new person. And then the fire inspector would be.
let's hold off on that. Let's just
Oh,
do
okay.
right now. Okay, so what's the rationale for these?
Maybe it'd be better. Do you want the fire chief, Scott?
Yeah, Scott or Jim. Jim, do you have a? Jim?
Yep, I can,
Oh, go ahead. Go ahead, Scott.
sure, I can do that. The rationale is to get them in place and ready to go because I'm anticipating retirements over the next couple of years. I have 5 firefighters who currently have 29 plus years who could walk out the door. It takes about 6 months to get them ready and trained. If I don't get them ready and trained in place, ready to go, it means a vacancy. So vacancies, as you know, correlate to overtime. So overtime is a lot of money. So the expense that you have up front could really be offset by the savings in the overtime down the road. So inevitably, I have to hire firefighters. I have to replace them. So this is a little bit of forward thinking, getting ready for that. And that's what we're looking at.
Okay, good. And also we know that the firefighters right now, they're much more on the front lines. And so we wouldn't want to have a gap there, especially in the coming months. And so I can see the rationale on that. So any comments? What we'll do is just quickly go through this with the council, if anyone wants to make changes to this or leave it as is. So Mr. Lima?
No, I'm fine the way it is, Matt. We have to move forward with this.
Mr. Murray?
No comment at this time.
Mr. Pugh?
I'm fine with it.
Ms. Lawler? Jill?
You're muted, Jill.
I'm fine with this.
Okay, so that sounds good. So that's that. And we've got, just trying to go through, I mentioned the recycling coordinator. All right, we also had a position, a planning technician that was at 73,000. So that would be that position being replaced. And right now, I mean, I think we've got to start to think about, if we look at what's going on in the private sector, people are at 80% salary, people are making do with less. This the planning technician position, $73,000. There's, not as big of a burden on as there is like on the firefighters right now there. So I think, Jim, that we're talking about bringing in a DPW person in January. If 73,000, we could divide that in quarters. If we did that in quarters with a September, January, or even a later date to bring in the planning technician, Chris, what would 73,000 divided by 4 be? I know I could do it here, but.
Right, I think we were at 26, we're about 26,000, same thing, 20, right, with all the salary and benefits. Hold on, 70. It's 74,000 for the,
I think right now the line item is 73,000 for that.
hold on. Yeah, because that's right, because we budgeted, that was at the, I think it's budgeted at a September hire. Hold the phone. Yeah, that's already set up as a September hire. So normally, at a full-time, it's 94.
Mm-hmm.
So divide that by 4, and that's about 23.5 per quarter.
Mm-hmm.
This is already budgeted at the September hire date in the budget.
Mm-hmm.
So it's 23.5 per quarter-ish.
Okay. All right, Mr. Lima.
Well, I mean, again, I don't know how bogged down planning is. We don't know what's going to happen here for the future. So again, Mike, are you backed up? what's on the ticket. I look at things, Mike, as if we were to look at a needs list of things in this town that need to get moved forward, how difficult is it in your office with the two of yous right now versus having that third person? And again, I know it's a tough thing to predict, but could you go a little bit without the third person? And we just concentrate, like I said, on a needs list and put some of the other stuff to the side that's really not pending right away.
Well, Councilman Lima, there are, as you know, numerous action items in the comprehensive plan that the department has been hoping to pursue in the near future. We could put that kind of stuff on a back burner. We do have the bulk zoning and the RV storage ordinance pending, as you know, as well as changes to the harbor management plan. These are all scheduled. But in terms of answering your question, I would like to inform the group, we have some really big projects coming down the pipe. We have two, and these are projects going either through planning board or zoning board. Two major projects, commercial restaurant projects that are going through zoning board right now. We've got the development plan for the 66-acre Kenyon property that is coming in. I've got an application that was submitted or submittal to the building inspections department that came in a couple of weeks back. We have two hotels being proposed for Boone Street. These are just the commercial developments and the large condo development in Kenyon. So to give you the short answer, we are busy, and typically we get a burst of activity this time of year, which is what happened, and we get another burst of activity in the fall. So while I'm not averse and worked with Mr. Tierney on proposing the delay to September, I would strongly resist delaying any further.
Okay.
I mean, we've got to think though about these positions, everybody, and new positions coming on when people resign or retire, and we've got to really think about the real world out there. I mean, when we get into our union negotiations, we've got 1033 and 94 coming up. I mean, I'm very hopeful that the labor leaders will not be looking for major increases in this environment. So we just, I mean, we've got to, we have, yes, these people are important to us, and we want to take care of people. But right now, this is a position that's not filled. So we're not hurting anybody. We're not sending somebody, we're not giving somebody an 80% salary or furloughing them for a year, which is happening in the private sector, and people just get their health care. And so then they have to collect unemployment. I mean, so I think we've got to really start to get serious.
Yeah, I'd like to listen to the rest of the council, Matt. I think for me, I'm going to hold back on this position for a bit. I don't really see filling it right away. That's just me.
Mr. Murray.
Okay, well, again, planning works in conjunction with the building inspector's office. And, it's a department that moves things forward that produce revenue. So, and we've had a backlog of planning meetings. People can't pull permits because we didn't let them. I think it's a bad time to be taking those two offices and thinking about trying to save money by eliminating people. I think we need to get caught up and keep the train on the track with sand on the track to keep this permit planning locomotive moving forward. Thank you.
Mr. Pugh.
Hi. So I just want to get a little bit more comment from Mike. Mike, if you don't mind, Just have a couple questions for you. So I know how
Come on.
involved, thanks. I know how involved your department is. Department is in pretty much, all of the work and the policy that we put through at the council level. Planning is part of that. Every meeting that we have, there's a representative from your department there, whether it's a main council meeting, it's a board meeting, a different committee, there's either you or Jill almost always there. So I think for me, that tells me that it's an extremely important department. It also tells me that having only 2 staff there to be physically present at these meetings, we need to have the resources there. 2 people can only do so much. So I guess my question to you is, and you may have answered it, but I just want to double check. How important is it to have this position filled this spring and summer? Like, is waiting till September going to be a struggle, or do you feel like that is doable, just not ideal?
Waiting till September was what I agreed with town manager on when we went through our recent discussions. The summer will be difficult, but I believe Jill and I, along with Heidi, can handle it. But we do get a big influx of applications in the fall. I don't know why, but I think maybe people are trying to beat the weather. But so I could, I'm very prepared to have a 1-quarter delay in the hiring of that position. I would also like to point out, and I should have pointed out in answer to Mr. Lima's question, that in the absence of the building inspector, my office, which is right now Jill and I sharing this responsibility, are answering most of the zoning questions. David Antonelli doesn't answer those questions, nor does many of those questions, nor do the 2 clerks in that office. And the state building inspector will not address questions that relate to dimensional issues or the fine elements of our zoning ordinance. So we've taken on an additional responsibility there. If we don't get the planning tech position filled in, then the work that individual's been doing, which is focusing on assisting Jill with the zoning applications, as well as assisting me and being the primary person handling the Historic District Commission, then Jill and I are going to get backed up. She's working from home, as you know. She can only come in a limited period of time, and it will add pressure if we can't get that position filled by September.
Mm-hmm. And let me apologize also for saying 2 people when it's really 3 currently in the department. I had my numbers wrong there. Okay. So I think that helps a little bit. Did you guys start the process of interviewing or advertising this position yet?
No, we have
all?
not. No, we have
Okay.
not. We submitted the paperwork to the manager and HR. That's pending. No solicitations have gone out.
Okay. All right. So thank you, Mike. So my position on this is that I think it's somewhat risky to hold off on this hiring. We know there's a little bit of risk of getting backed up through the summer, especially with the new bulk zoning ordinances. So I'd like to see it hired earlier. So yeah, I'm going to say I'm not really for waiting till September.
You want to add to the budget. That's what you want to do. That's what you would do. Right? I'm just asking. Is that what you want to do? So you would want to add a quarter to the budget.
Sure. Okay. Yes,
Okay.
I would add.
Right. Good. That's great.
Excuse me.
Ms. Lawler.
Matt, I'm talking. If you could hold off for a second. I would be for hiring this position now, and I'm fine with the additional costs involved in that 1/4 of a year's salary. Yes.
Good. All right, Ms. Lawler.
I think we're finding here what we're going to see throughout this budget meeting, that money is short. Matt brings a good point. What's happening in the private sector, we're protecting people. So fire and safety, I mean, that's a no brainer. To Chief Partington, he needs to have these recruits done. But I think we're going to have to make some really difficult decisions. It'd be great to say yes to everybody. We need everything. Of course we do. But we're going to have to make some really tough decisions here, because although Jim's already trimmed back the budget, we need to do some more work on it. And this is one, I think that Mike, respectfully, maybe you can wait till September. If we could have that extra cushion is what Jim Tierney is recommending to us. I tend to say, let's do that. I mean, there are going to be some other areas. We're just starting tonight, and here we are already just like finding something in community development that we'd all love to have happen. But we're going to need to make some tough decisions. And I think with this one, waiting to September is something that I could live with.
All right, so that's already what the budgetary amount is. So
Yep.
there would be no change there, Chris Spagnoli,
Correct?
okay? Because you've already budgeted for a September start.
Correct.
Okay, so that's what I have for positions, unless I've missed something. The fire inspector, the assistant fire inspector, I think that's only $11,000 or $12,000.
Yeah, that's all it is, about 12,000, that right.
So I don't see that conversation worth, and it's not till January anyway.
Right, and then that position would probably be bringing in, most likely be bringing in more revenues, so.
Correct.
It's
All right.
really minimal.
All right, are there any specific questions for the council then, on the operating? Is there any positions or anything in terms of, you know, on those, or comments that anybody has right now on anything that we've gone over? Mr. Lima?
No, I'm pretty good. I mean, you know, the rental registration, like I said, I am not opposed to going up to a higher fee. These positions, I realize that Mr. DeLuca is, you know, he's willing to wait till September. I appreciate that. Because again, we don't even know where we stand with what's going on. And I know people are going to develop, and I don't want to hold back developers. I don't want to hold back the building. Income comes in, I get it. And at some point, we may have to even speed this process up overall in the town to be able to get the money flowing and get these projects going. So I'm happy at this point with where we're at with this. So that's all I have to say.
Mr. Murray?
Yeah, again, we can't start taxing some of these new, big, beautiful buildings that are being built all over town here until they close out that building permit. And then that gets marched up to the tax assessor's office. Then we start taxing them. So we definitely don't want to slow some of this process down. If anything, we want to, you know, try to keep the tax assessor and the building inspector's office communicating to make sure there's no downtime in taxing these new big, beautiful projects here that are around town. So, but yeah, I mean, I think this conversation is going to continue. I'll sit tight for now. Thank you.
Yeah. All right, Mr. Pugh?
What, didn't we
They're
comment
just
on this?
general, yeah, this is nothing, yeah, just if there's anything else you wanted to add to this conversation. So,
I'm good.
good. All right. Ms. Lawler?
I have nothing additional.
Okay, so then the next would be the enterprise funds, but in the general fund, we also have the recommendation from the library. So Chris, do you want to go over the recommendation from the library, please?
Okay, the library budget is on page 68. Just give me a minute to get there.
What page, Chris?
68.
Thank you.
So as you know, the budget is presented is from the library leadership. As I said before, we had several meetings, we had some discussions. You know, a lot of it was for Jim and I's benefit for awareness and understanding of their budget. We offered several suggestions and they made some concessions. As far as the budget goes, the increase in revenue, they're asking for $841,103. There's a slight decrease in the state aid because the actual expenditures in 2019 were lower than expected. So that'll be 177,000 instead of the normal 181. And the expenses salaries were all booked on the same as the town, a 3% increase in salaries and 8% and 3% for health and dental. And they also reduced the building repair lines from 40,000 down to 15,000. And the budget is what it is in front of you.
All right, thank you. All right, so on that allocation of 841, what is the council's thought process on that, Mr. Lima?
All right, so we got a lot of, there's a lot of turbulence last budget meeting about this library. And there are things that I would like to bring out that I'm not sure the public is aware of. And I will start with the fact that the library, it was in the paper, it was at council meetings, we were tormented with it. The library would be crippled. The library would have to close. We may only run 3 days a week. And if Patty, you're on, how many days was that library building closed before COVID-19? COVID-19 came.
How many days were we closed?
Yeah, you were closed.
I don't have that figure.
Were you closed any of your normal working days?
Maybe a snow day or two, that's about it.
Okay, so the library never closed after we were accused it would have to close due to the funding that we allocated to the library. I'd like people to also know that these articles went in the paper in May. And in June, after the money was allocated, June 26, 2019, raises were given to the employees. And I said before, I'm not against raises, because I feel that some of the people that have been working at the library are due a lot more than what they're receiving. And then there's others that I question. And no discredit to anybody, I'm going to just put out some of the figures. And when I look at positions, and this is all about positions, this isn't about individuals. So don't quote me on individuals, quote me on the positions. Our surrounding communities have librarians. If calculated on a 40-hour week, at the rate that the position pays, the head librarian position in our town is paying roughly $93,600. And if I'm wrong, I want to be corrected. Our surrounding community, which is South Kingston, I'll use them as an example. That librarian, I believe, runs 3 buildings. Their salary is $87,000. There are people that have been working in the library for years. And I don't know how you come about these salaries. I mean, how are the salaries determined here, Patty? What do you use for formulas?
The OLIS, which is the Department of Library Services, puts out an annual report every year, and it highlights what all the libraries are paying to certain positions. So it's usually an average of what is calculated on the services that they offer. Now, for example, South Kingstown Library has 1 director with 3 libraries, but they also have branch managers that they pay, which is above. They manage each library and the director oversees those 3. She has only been there for 3 or 4 years. The library position right now is paying on 31 or 30 years of experience.
Right. Well,
And I
as
have
far
a
as-
and that's a master's degree, which is required.
Right, so again, we do have surrounding community libraries that pay 75,000, 80,000 for this librarian position. So just want people to be aware where we are compared to everybody else.
Well, you have to make sure you're comparing apples to apples, not apples to oranges, please.
Well, if the head librarian at South Kingston is making 87, can she come over and run our library?
She could come over and run it for less because she doesn't have as much experience.
Okay. So then we have employees of the library, and I encourage these employees of the library to become a town department. I wish they would sit with the town manager. I wish they would put together a plan to become town employees, because when I look at the list, some of these salaries for some of these people would increase substantially. Not only would you be vested in the town, you'd have a pension, benefits, a union, protection, negotiations. So that's what I would like to see. And I can tell you in the past years of when the building that's named after Maury Lugents, that the library board would actually have 2 or 3 individuals sit down with the town manager and do out a budget, and do a budget that was fair and affordable to the taxpayers. So on that note, I'm also going to look at the benefit package. In 2008, this town switched over all its department heads to a Blue Cross plan and got out a United plan. And there's still a person, and it's a position that's paying into the United plan. Nobody else in the town has this plan. And that plan's costing the taxpayers about $6,000 a year. And that is a substantial amount of money. We offer another plan that our other department heads take. And they've had to take it because we transferred them over to it and they agreed to it. So for having one individual to sit on a plan that's costing taxpayers over $6,000 a year, you take from 2008 to now, that's a $70,000 item that's costing the taxpayers money, and a lot of money. And I believe that everybody should have uniform health care. I don't think anybody should have a better plan than anybody else. I think that that should all be uniform. So I just want the public to understand that. Now, as I look at the line items for the library, I want to go down to personal services. This line item is
Professional services?
Professional services, 50201. In 2019, it was roughly a $48,000 figure. And this year it was around 45,000. What is that for?
That is for the fundraiser that was recommended to be hired.
So we're paying a fundraiser person to raise funds for existing building? Is it the existed building that he's
It's
raising? these
for the
funds?
library project, whatever that project might be.
So could be for the existed building, could be for a building up by the community center?
I don't have anything to do with that.
Okay. Well, personally, we've paid this gentleman in the last 2 years, or this person, I don't know if it's a gentleman, who it is, $93,975 out of taxpayer money to fundraise. I don't know where that idea comes up with taxpayers are going to pay somebody to fundraise for something that isn't in stone on what the money's really going to be for. And I really don't, what has he raised? I mean, if we paid him that money, where's the account showing us what he's put into it? We
Well,
should
I
have
do
that
believe with the litigation, we can't talk about that.
Okay, fine. So I also look at this budget And I just want it to be known to the public that the opportunity was there, the library board, to put in $441,000 into our fund, into the checkbook of the taxpayers. And we would transfer it right back. And they would have got the state funding of 181,000. And they chose not to. And now you're coming at me with a budget where what, you're putting that 181 in there? Now you want the taxpayers to pick up that difference? I'm not for that as well. So,
we've gotten 841, 103 for the past 5 years. We've never asked for an increase.
right. But we also funded you last year 400,000, knowing the money that you had on hand would run that library, and it wasn't closed one day. Nobody got furloughed. And it seems to me like there was no problem. And if you would have taken the 181, you would have had a substantial overage again. So for me, this is how I'm looking at it. I'm taking the $45,000 out of there because I'm not paying a fundraising guy with taxpayer money. That's not.
Excuse me,
happening.
but that was recommended by the last council that we hire a fundraiser.
Well, whether you did or not, I don't have to vote for it or approve it.
I'm just letting you know why.
Okay. Okay. So this is how I see it. I'm willing to fund again the 400,000. You'll get 100, and Chris Bagnoli just told me that you'll get 177,000.
If we meet the standards and that kind of thing, yes.
Right. So with the 400 and the 177, you'll have 577,000. To run the library. You won't have 45,000 from me. Maybe the other council people would love to give it to you, and that's fine. But I'm definitely not willing to do that. I also look at donations, which really in this town, it makes me wonder. Donations, $1,100, that's it?
Because the donations are now going to the Friends and the fundraising for the library project. So we're not accepting donations through the library because of the campaign that is in process. I mean, we're accepting them, but most people are giving them to the campaign. That's
Well,
why we dropped that down.
Well, that's how I see it. You know, library didn't close. Nobody got furloughed. There were
Right,
no
we did,
redu-
and
there
we
were no
used
reduced hours.
all our money in the surplus account, and that is gone or will be gone.
Right, and
And-
you should have gotten the 181, but you chose not to. So I'm not gonna have the taxpayers reach in their pocket for 181,000 that you didn't take. That's, you know, that's ridiculous. Nobody would have not taken that deal. Patrick Murray would have taken that deal, believe me. I know Patrick, he wouldn't turn down.
Okay, I don't need to be yelled
181,000.
at.
I'm not yelling. I'm just stating.
I
a
believe you are.
I'm stating the facts. I'm stating the facts to the public. That's what I'm stating. I'm allowed to state the facts. So as far as I'm concerned, I will give you 400,000 and 177. And that's what I'm willing to do. Let's listen to everybody else and see what they're willing to do for you.
And
Mr.
do I get
Murray.
a chance to let you know what the library does and how we spend our money and what the,
We've heard it many times, Patty.
I
Mr.
see it,
Murray.
Patty. I have it in front of me. I know.
We've done it. We've looked at it. We've heard 90,000 times. Mr. Murray.
Okay, well, it is a budget hearing. Anyway, yeah, this whole debacle surrounding the library. You cut the budget in half, forcing them to use their reserve. They burn through the reserve. They're asking for what they've been asking for the last 5 years. And I believe the reason they didn't take that deal, the 181 from the state, they pay, we turn around and give them a check to the town. I think there was a trust factor there. I think a lot of this, what this last year's council was stating wasn't followed through. I mean, direct misrepresentations when it come to the library and their funding and other issues. So I think there was a big trust factor last year as far as budgeting and swapping monies out from the state. So I think that's why that didn't happen. Certainly, everything's in a holding pattern as far as, we have the Belmont building down there. To me, I think everything's on hold. If these folks want that 841, the level fund them and keep them going, I can support that.
All right, Mr. Pugh.
Thanks.
Mr. Pugh, thank you.
Yep, I'm here. So we might need to kind of re-examine exactly what's going on here right now. First, donations. I think the reason why you have residents not wanting to donate to a library fund that's going to be held by the library is because you have a council who took that money. The council took the money that the library had, which included donations, and made it become part of the operating budget. Why would you donate when your money is going to be used to fund that operating budget for a library that's supposed to be paid for by taxes? You're donating to a cause. You're donating maybe for the library project, for other things the library does, you're not donating to run the library. That's what the town does. So that's why you're seeing $1,100 as donations in that fund. Salaries. This is the only department so far tonight that we've gone into to drill down to what employees make in those departments. We haven't done that across any departments. We've talked about positions that are delayed in hiring. We haven't talked about individual salaries until now. South Kingstown, like Patty said, they have additional positions. They're spending more money. So their head librarian makes $87,000. They have the branch managers. It's a higher number when you add those together. We're talking about a $6,000 difference in that position, plus branch managers. So I don't really understand what's going on with that critique. Why did the library stay open? The library stayed open because they spent the reserve as they were asked to do to run the library. This council cut the budget to $400,000 and forced the library to spend their entire reserve to run operations. That's what they did. So now you want to set a new baseline of $400,000 for a budget? Last year, I said publicly multiple times that this council cut the library budget by 50%. The council president said that was untrue. They didn't cut anything because the rest of the budget is going to be funded with the reserve. Okay, fine. That's what you want to say. So you take those two numbers, you're at 800. That's the budget. 800,000 and change is the budget. It's not 400,000. So resetting this budget because you're going to pretend that was an operating budget is like, what do you even say to that? Maybe if someone's not paying attention, they would believe that. Anyone who's paying attention to anything understands what happened last year and what people are trying to do now. So it might be time to separate your personal feelings in this matter, set those aside, do what is the correct thing to do, which is the proposal from the town manager, fund the library, the same amount has been funded for years and years. The one department who hasn't requested an increase, right? Let's look at the budget. Every department has an increase. Every department, right? Library's not even asking for an increase. They're the one department asking to be level funded the amount they've always been funded. You run a library at $400,000 plus the state money. There's $550,000, $570,000. Employee expenses are $700,000. All right. do you care at all about having a library in town in Narragansett? Because if you do, fund it the same it's been funded for years. That's all that's being asked for here. This is the only library in the state that's continued to run through this epidemic. The one library that stayed open in some way, in some form, continuing to lend books, continuing to offer Wi-Fi in the parking lot, in fact, boosting the Wi-Fi so people can use it. Again, they're asking for the same amount of money that they've always received. And that $50,000 for the fundraiser, that's there so that they can raise money to take the burden away from the taxpayer. So when a new library is built or renovated or whatever happens, we know there's gonna be a new library of some form at some time. There's gonna be money there to offset that cost. So $93,000 over 2 years to pay that fundraiser. I know we're not gonna get into the numbers because it's in litigation, but more money has been raised than has been expended for that position. So you have a net gain. You take that net gain, that's used for a new building, you're saving the taxpayers money. So you could look at it and say, oh, $50,000. Think about it, okay? It's not a simple equation. It's not just $50,000. There's money to be made there. And that's what that fundraiser is doing. So I am for the 841. If you want to shave it down $12,000 because of that $6,000 salary difference and the other 6,000 Ricky called out, shave it down $12,000. But it needs to be in that 800 something range, just like the town manager proposed it be. Thank you.
Ms. Lawler.
So I agree with Rick as far as the fundraiser, that should be eliminated from this. I do have a question for Mark Davis. You mentioned that the legal funds and legal bills, have we accounted for how much legal fees we've paid for the library?
Directly related to the library, Jill, I don't have the exact number, but we're approximately 25,000 to date.
Okay, thank you.
Just on the litigation expense.
And so far, and there'll be
Yeah.
more in the future. Okay, all right.
Yeah, it'll be significantly more this year.
Gotcha. Patty, you mentioned that the building repair was brought down from 40 to 15. What is it that you are opting not to repair in the building? Oops, you're on mute.
Sorry about that.
No worries.
Had planned some projects to add a ramp to the back emergency exit. Right now, there is no ramp, it's just stairs. And then we also had looked at some other little projects, updating some of the bathrooms. We have plumbing issues with those bathrooms, so we were hoping to be able to do something with that. But those are the kind of things we backed out of the budget.
Is there, because those seem like pretty big things to me, because when this whole started, it started because we needed a larger child's area and ADA acceptance. So I guess I don't understand why we would not want to add on a ramp if the ADA is one of the reasons why we really need to improve, one of the things we need to improve from the library.
That is not an ADA thing right now. It's grandfathered in is what I understand. The problem with the ADA is mostly the stacks in the library are too narrow.
Okay.
That's why we don't meet the ADA.
Okay. The other thing I wanted to talk to you about, Patty, is with the COVID, what do you anticipate coming back? I'm hearing so many different things about how long this virus can live. And the library for me is one of those places that I think is going to be especially difficult to deal with, the new normal that we're dealing with. The virus attacks the older population, and we know that the population that uses the library are young and the older. What are you thinking about doing? How do you anticipate, or what have you heard from other libraries, how they're approaching this whole COVID? Because if the virus is going to live on the books, I mean, it's disinfecting all the different books that come in, disinfecting all the areas, the computers. I mean, this is a large project. And I know it was mentioned the other day by one of your library board trustees that perhaps the library needs to be made bigger because of the 6 foot apart. And I'm wondering if the future of the library is going to be different now, living into this new reality. Are we going to be doing things more mobile? I know Rick Lehman and I spoke the other day about some towns have bookmobiles they bring. I know you guys have been bringing books to people. Is it going to be different? And what is your approach going to be for having people come in and feel safe in the library?
Well, right now, OLIS is governing us as far as what we will be doing. They have a task force and it's called Opening the Libraries. And we're actually meeting tomorrow to discuss things that will need to be done. Of course, we follow the CDC recommendations and the Department of Health and that type of thing. We will have to modify how we do business. And it will be a phased in effect, just like the rest of the government is doing with businesses and such. We have already modified our services for the past almost 2 months now. We can't let people in the building. So therefore we're bringing the books outside the building. We've extended our Wi-Fi into the parking lot so people can work in their cars. So this is something, again, that we'll all be talking about tomorrow as to what we can do to continue to offer services.
Yeah, because I'm wondering if I'm sorry.
As far as the risk of the virus surviving on books, it's been said it's a very low risk.
Okay. Yeah, because I'm wondering, everyone's speculating on what the new world's going to look like, and I don't know that libraries are going to get bigger. I think they might get smaller, and I think we might see people doing more like what you're talking about now.
Well, be honest with you, I think this is making people appreciate what library has physically. They, of course, appreciate the ebooks now, and some libraries, including ours, we've put in some extra money to help buy more resources as far as electronic stuff. But people really miss coming into the library, having those books, being able to browse and get what they need, find the information. It's difficult to have somebody do that for you.
Sure, but I'm wondering whether going into this year, because when the state government does come back, as far as funding, Jim, have you spoken to OLIS at all? I mean, how is OLIS being funded now? Will they have the money? And going into this year, will we even be opening the library? And when will it be? So the dollar amount that Rick tossed out there might be a dollar amount that will run this library, subtracted by the Dan Barry's fundraising dollar amount. It might be what we need, because we might not be able to open until, hey, maybe November. And the other question, Patty, did you guys apply for any of those PPP programs, or any of the, are you eligible? And did you look into any of furloughing your employees at all? Because I know that, we can't do that. You guys don't work for us.
Yes, some of the part-timers are furloughed.
Okay.
Right now we have minimum staff working. It's mostly the full-timers.
Okay, good.
And, we're doing what we can. And I think, again, we know we're not going to be opened in the next two weeks, but the plan that is being devised is for all libraries, not just our consideration, because they have to make sure that if they just open one library or two libraries, they're going to get, a surge of people wanting those services. And if they can't get them in their own library, they're going to come to ours.
Sure. I guess I can't
see that now. So
if our governor is looking at opening up restaurants at 50% capacity, because you have to be 6 feet apart, and having people park, I just don't know that when we'll be able to open it up. And I don't know that we need to have as large of a budget as we have now, because I just don't think they'll be using it.
Well, rather you use the library. It's still the people who work at the library, what costs the most money, as Jesse said. Our salaries and benefits and costs to have that staff is almost over $700,000. Those are the people who provide the services, whether you're providing physical services or electronic services. Those services still take time, money, and effort to provide, whether it's electronic or virtual or necessarily in person. We do it by phone, by computer, email,
Did you look into the PPP program, the Paycheck Protection Program, Patty?
we did talk to other library directors and they weren't sure if we were eligible, but because we have unemployment, then we're just paying the full-timers who are doing the work. So that's where we left it.
Okay. You might want to look into it because, that's money there for payroll. And it's a good option to take a look at. Yeah, the number that is in front of us, the 841, that's not going to be a fly number for me either. And Dan Barry's fundraising, I can't see why the town taxpayers should pay for that dollar amount.
Excuse me, quick question for Mark Davis. Mark, you had said the number was 25,000 for litigation? Library related?
Off the top of my head, Jesse, it's about 25,000, I think.
So what is that litigation?
That litigation is the Susan Cicilline Bonanno, Friends of Your Library, Gilbane, those matters.
Okay, so
Brought
that's
against the
not,
town.
yep, those are outside groups, correct?
Well, Lori, yeah, they're outside, yes, right. Laura
right.
Kelly and individuals in addition to those groups, yeah.
So
Correct.
it's not, yeah, nothing to do with the library budget.
No, I'm not speaking to the library budget. I'm just saying the litigation involves the library moving to Belmont.
Yeah, right. And we have court cases related to the police department, the fire department, a lot of different departments.
There's litigation affecting, other departments.
Yeah, okay, but we didn't bring those up tonight.
We're not talking about them. We're talking about the library right now.
So it it has nothing to do with the people that work for the library or their budget. That's a case because this town council decided to change course. It has nothing to do with the library and the people that work there. It has to do with an outside group who's unhappy.
No, basically it has to do with Jesse that last year we gave them enough money. They had enough money in their coffers. We were accused of they're going to close, they're going to furlough, they're going to do this. There was enough money to run the budget. And I believe with what we're giving them this year, there'll be enough money to run that budget. And if that building has issues, which they're responsible for, not us, they're responsible. But if that building has issues or they run into some issues, this council at any point can go to the finance director and get money that is needed to put into the library at any point. It's called an emergency. And if we run into that, we will. But from what I'm seeing, they'll have enough money. They're not even open yet. I will always make sure that library, those doors open the hours that they have on their schedule. Believe me. If
Thanks,
they choose
Rick.
to close it,
Thanks a
if
lot.
they chose to close it, Jesse, they'll close it. If they
All right.
choose not to take money, they'll choose that. But I'm not talking about closing a library, laying people off, not giving them benefits. I'm talking about looking at a budget and funding what's needed. We are going to be in a desperate situation in this town to be able to support our families, the people in residence, and especially small businesses, because we don't know what direction we're going in. So even if the budget's small, don't get nervous about it. If we need more, I know where to get it. And so don't the rest of us. Thank you.
And I have-
Jill, I just want to,
I'm glad you bring that up.
Jesse, I'm
Actually,
going to go back
I'm
to
glad-
Jill. Jesse, I'm
No,
going to go
sorry,
back to
I'm
Jill right now.
glad
Jesse,
you
I
bring
went
that
in
up.
order. Jesse, I went in order. I want to go back to Jill's. Because I don't think she finished her thought. I just want to go back to her. We went in order. We've heard, this is why I said there's side conversations, break out, right?
I'll
Let's try
speak
to
after
do this in a formal manner, all right?
I also needed to finish.
Patty, I'm gonna come to you after I talk to Jill, right?
No, it was about Jill's question about the building maintenance. I'm not
Okay.
sure when this comes into play, but the capital improvement plan, which has the information that we had $50,000 that we could use for the different things that we needed to do. And that was part of the reason why we also cut some of the money out of the operating expense, was so we could use that 50,000 if we needed to.
Thank you, and then we're gonna come back to you. Jill, just wanted to make sure that you got everything out, because we were going in order and then we lost it. Ms. Lawler?
Yeah, no, I think I did. My main concern is when the state government starts coming back and we still don't know, Jim, we still don't know a hard figure that we're gonna get from the state for the town. When the budget starts coming, money comes back into them, we don't even know how much OLS is gonna be funded, and it's probably gonna be one of the departments that might get funded later than others that are more health and welfare based. So I'm gonna be in agreement with Rick, the 400 and the 177, the 577. That's without Dan Barry's fees.
Thank you. All right, Miss Arkwright, is there anything that you would like to add regarding the library?
I was just going to touch again on the donation portion of the budget, which, as I explained, the donations, a lot of them have been turned over. People are giving their money to the project because they want to improve the library. So all that money that we'll be paying for the fundraiser will also be some of the donations in the long run.
Okay, and is there anything you wanted to say about the, since St. Patrick's Day, about operations? I think you've kind of already talked about it, but is there anything else you want to add to that?
Well, I just want to add that libraries do support the residents in many ways. And by cutting the budget without the money that we had to pay this year's budget, to help with the budget, we don't have that money, but we're going to be needed more than ever before in this pandemic. And libraries are seeing that across the country, because that's what we're there for, is to support people. And that includes unemployed people, that includes small businesses, and that includes the residents. So I think it is, rather than cutting the budget, you should be looking at least level funding it so that we can continue to serve patrons in this pandemic.
All right, so a couple things we talked about that some of you guys had talked about, drilling down on salaries. We drilled down on many salaries today. So we talked, Ricky talking about one salary in the library. There's other salaries that we drilled down, and we talked about the planning technician, and we talked about the recycling coordinator. So that's part of the operating budget. Maintenance of effort from last year, the $400,000 number would match that, which would then allow for the OLS reimbursement to come through. There have not been people in the building since St. Patrick's Day. I know there's been a lot of electronic work going on in terms of providing books and bringing them out to the parking lot, but there have not been actual people in the building since St. Patrick's Day, and we've all experienced that, right? We've all experienced,
Right.
St. Patrick's Day got canceled, and it was not very fun. So I think one thing that I had looked at in terms of just the library's history, library actual expenses, 2016 actual was $848,755. The 2017 actual was $881,831. 2018 actual was $884,748. And then it jumped to over $1 million in 2019. And that's part of the reason there's been concern across the board. And one of the things that happened in the debate last year was that concern about that surplus growing, and that you didn't see that elsewhere. And that was one of the reasons that we had that kind of conversation last time. But I'm going to return to the fact that we have, and again, I intend to talk about this in the union negotiations, but the private sector, we look at places, restaurants that I've spoken to. their staff members are working not their regular shifts so that they can at least keep them having something going with takeout. And they don't want to necessarily lay people off. So we've got to be looking at being, just more conservative here, more fiscally conservative and more realistic across the board. So in terms of this allocation, I agree with Rick and Jill. So we're going to reduce, Chris, this allocation from 841,103 in the budget to 400,000. All right, do you have that, Chris Spagnoli?
Yes, sorry, I was unmuting in the wrong place. So we're going to 400,000 for the maintenance of effort.
400,000 will be the number
Yeah.
on line 49201. Yep, general transfer instead of 841.
Okay,
And that doesn't jeopardize the maintenance of effort from OLS. All right, so that wraps up on the general fund. Our next item is the enterprise funds, which I'm going to have Chris Spagnoli do a brief summary for us on those. And she's talked about this a little bit in her first presentation. That we're all familiar with the enterprise funds, water, wastewater, and beach. I'm just to let you go from there, Chris, in terms of the enterprise funds. Just before you go, enterprise funds, whatever we guys change in this budget here, nothing really is returned to the taxpayer. Correct me if I'm wrong, Chris Spagnoli.
that is correct.
Ms. Spagnoli. So we can talk about them, but there's not a lot of savings that you get here. And so I'd implore you, if you're really in the specifics of these budgets, you may want to talk to the engineer or to Steve Wright. But in terms of the general principles, I'm going to turn it over to the finance director.
Okay, so as we know, enterprise funds, which is water, wastewater, beach, and Middlebridge, they are primarily supported with their own revenue sources.
Mm-hmm.
The major thing with these funds this year is the administrative fees and the payment in lieu of taxes. They've been increased to align with the support provided by the general funds. That's the overall statement for all of them. Water, there is an approximate decrease in the budget from 2.5 million in 2020 to 2.19 million in 2021. It's about a 12% decrease in the overall budget. And the decrease really is reducing the amount of fund balance budgeted. So it's pretty level overall. In wastewater, there's an approximate decrease in the budget from 6.5 in 2020 to 5.16 in 2021. It's about a 21% decrease. And overall, the operating budget is basically level funded. The reduction in this budget is due to a decrease in the, there was a capital project for Scarborough wastewater facility, and they also eliminated 2 of their debt service payments. So those 2 of those debt services have been wiped out. The beach, there's an increase in the budget. It went from 3.2 million in 2020 to 4.6 million in 2021. That's a 20% increase. And the operating portion, again, is basically funded. The big increase is in their capital projects and also the increase in administrative fees. Those details can be discussed further in the capital improvement plan part of the presentation. Middlebridge is basically level funded. And there was a recommendation by the town manager to eliminate the general fund transfer in 2021 due to their fund balance of $70,900. That was as of 6/30/2019. There's a couple of small capital projects due that it's minimal. So that's it for the enterprise. Very, very basic. They have a lot of capital, but their operating has been pretty much level.
Good. Are there any questions or questions or comments on the enterprise funds? Before we go to everybody, I just Middlebridge. So are we? It's finally paid off. Is that the last year? I missed that. And so, okay, I'm going to look at that. But we go down the line. What page is Middlebridge on? I always had Middlebridge with special revenue, so I kind of overlooked it there. I had it prepared for that tonight.
Oh, 66.
Page 66. Okay, I'm gonna go to the council members while I look at that. Thank you. Director Spagnoli, we're gonna go to Mr. Lima.
So again, as we look at the overall budgets, and we heard it from our town manager and Chris, is prior to this, everything getting to where we are, they cut 1.8 million out, 1.8 million. So that was taken from Parks and Rec, DPW, town budget, and there's, what else is there? Police and fire. The enterprise fund for the water department, they're on their own. The beach. So people understand this, the beach, in lieu of taxes, and you have it as services. Is that how it is stated now, Chris, is the money
The
that's paid?
The administrative fees are
The
served.
administrative, okay, so the administrative fees for the beach used to be around 100 and just under 200,000. Okay, and that was like an offset in lieu of taxes, the beach would pay that. And that comes out of the enterprise fund, doesn't come out of any of the taxpayer money.
Right.
Well, this year here, that fund is gonna be 200,000 more, is that correct?
Which one, the beach?
Yes.
Yes.
200,000 more. So for the taxpayers of this town, we are taking money from the enterprise fund because they used to pay a administration fee,
Right.
and we've upped that fee. We've upped that fee, and that 200,000 now is going to go into general fund, which is going to help reduce the taxes in this town for our taxpayers substantially. That's 200,000. Can you imagine putting a $200,000 payment right now on the taxpayers? Never mind more than a $200,000 tax, a payment on the taxpayers. So we are reducing things for the taxpayers, and we're also utilizing the resources of being able to get money for the town so that, again, we can keep a budget that is reasonable. So just want people to be aware of that 200,000 from the enterprise fund, we're taking out more, but we haven't taken out in a long time that amount of money. We took the 197 roughly in that category. Now we've increased it. So I give the town manager and Chris, credit for, they're reaching in. They're reaching in, they're looking at everything. They're getting right down to every penny in our town. And as I said before, and I'll say it again, I will not let anybody in the town get hurt from this budget. If money is needed, I'm sure this council is there to help anybody, but we need to get it under control because we don't know the direction that we're going to be going here in the next week, day, months. We don't know where we're going to be in September. I hope that we're back to normal, but what is going to be normal? Nobody knows. So I thank you, Chris and Jim, for what you've done. And to this point, I just want people to understand where this money comes from.
All right, thank you, Ricky. Mr. Murray.
Yes. Okay, Chris, the beach enterprise fund, what was the balance of that?
The fund balance?
Yeah,
Is that what you're looking for?
yeah.
Okay. In 2019, they have an unrestricted fund balance of 3.8 million, 3,833,286 to be exact.
Okay,
Restricted.
and you said did you say you took 200,000 out of that? Is that what you said?
No, I didn't take it out of the fund balance.
You took it out of the
We
enterprise?
Right, we
Okay.
increased the administrative fees
Okay,
to the enterprise funds.
right. All right, now they got a beach replenishment fund. What's the balance of that? Do you have that number?
Is that in the,
I don't know, I think I'm on the wrong page over here anyways. I don't see it, so. It's gotta be, I think it's like 600,000.
625, and I think there's still another 125 going in it. That's, the capital.
Right. We've been putting 125 into that for the last, 4 years?
Yes, that's page 87 in the capital improvement plan, should be around page 87. That's where it starts. I don't know if Steve knows off the top of his head.
625,000.
What's that?
Also, 625,000.
Per year, right? So we're up, so in 2020, we'll be up to what, 750 or something, or?
Yeah, that's correct, Chris. 125,000.
Yeah, page 93. Yeah, page 93.
So what's the balance in there now before?
That's what's in there. That, well, right now, before we go into 2021, it's 625,000.
625, okay, thank you.
Correct.
And then we're planning on putting another 125,000 in, correct?
Correct.
Okay. I know Steve's gonna kill me. He's gonna hang me, but I think if we not donate 125,000 and we take out 125,000, this will leave that reserve, which is based on, that reserve was built to matching funds for beach replenishment in the event of a hurricane. So I think one could make the case that the COVID-19 is kind of like a hurricane in a different setting, but that would add about almost 6 cents off the mill rate if we.
That's not from the general fund.
Right, I know. It's an enterprise fund. It's a set aside that I mean, can we take it out? I'm not sure. Can we not fund the beach replenishment for this year and take 125 out? That's my question.
We can, Patrick, but it doesn't go back to the taxpayers. It just goes back into, it would just
But
go
we
back
can't-
into the general surplus of the beach fund. So those three funds, that's what I said at the beginning. You
Yeah,
don't get any taxpayer savings changing this.
Right,
We can change
right,
them. We
right.
can say, because we may want to beef up. One thing we might want to think about is beefing up the overall, I know I'm speaking out of turn, I know I'm not in order, but the overall fund balance, which is 3.2 million, because I have the fear that we might be spending a lot of money this summer at the beach, but we might not be getting the same revenue. So
right.
3.2 is a pretty good number, but if you wanted to replenish it 125 to give it a little more, but again, you're not giving anything to the taxpayers. You're just putting up a firewall essentially.
Alright,
Yeah,
alright.
but that I'm good. That's not a bad idea. I mean, but anyway, do you have any other? We'll come back to it, Patrick. We'll come back to that.
All right.
The council.
Yeah.
Do you have any other changes that you would make to enterprise water, wastewater?
Nah, I'm good.
All right, Mr. Pugh.
Can't find my paper.
Yeah, so I would agree with Matt actually on, there's a lot of uncertainty around what kind of money the beach is gonna be bringing in this year. So Steve, if you're on this, I have a few questions for you.
All set.
Can you give everybody kind of a little bit of an idea on what you guys have planned for the opening, dates, resources, phases? This isn't something that we talked about on Monday, so I figured this might be a good chance to go over that for the public in general.
Well, I can't get into specifics on when we're going to open and what the parameters are going to be, because we're actually going to determine that over the next couple of days based on the guidance from the town manager and from the state. But I can assure you that as far as the beach preparation, staffing, lifeguards, and being able to be prepared for COVID-19, we are as ready as we can and will be. And I can assure you that the beach will be available in some modified fashion this summer. And so we're ready to go. We just need to tweak what's going to happen. And I can assure you that between myself and the town manager, we will have news, I would imagine, over the next few days. I know that the sales office was supposed to open up last Saturday, and we suspect that that will be happening in some modified form, some type of curbside, touchless sales office, modified form in the next couple of days, next week or so.
Okay. And without getting into too much detail, because I know things are changing, do you anticipate ever having full staffing at the beach this year?
Well, unlike the state beaches, and we're in a better position than the state beaches to be able to contain or control crowds at the beaches. And that's one thing the state beaches are a little concerned about, where we have admission sites. So whatever number we put on, and we haven't determined that yet, whatever number we put on that is safe to be able to come to Narragansett Town Beach, having the admission sites means that we're going to be able to do that. So as far as staffing is concerned, we're going to have to keep the same level of staffing, at least for now, and that's to be determined. So yes, as we've been hiring right now, we have certified lifeguards, been to the checks, and we also have all of our sales office on board, and also all of the beach managers and pavilion staff and restroom staff. But again, they all have to be properly trained in with all the PPEs to be able to do that and keep our staff safe for the summer. So there may be not as many in past years, but we still need to be able to do that in a safe manner to protect our staff and the public. So I don't know if I answered your question, but we have to do it the right way, or we can't do it at all.
Okay, so it would be correct to say that even if the beach capacity was like 50%, based on limitations we put on, if that's the case, that it would still require normal year staffing levels.
Yes.
It would, okay. So
Maybe a little bit less, but we still need to be able to, have the parking lot attendants, people at the admission sites, and obviously be able to protect the beach. And you have to have the rotation of the staff. And we've given this a lot of thought. We may be able to, we're thinking about rotating the hours and restricting access to parking lots at night. So it's a lot of different scenarios we're putting into place. So I can't answer that question until we know exactly what the parameters of the operation are going to be.
okay, all right, thank you. When it comes to that transfer that comes back to the town from the beach that Mr. Lima brought up, it's good to hear. I wouldn't necessarily call that a substantial number or occurrence or event. A transfer of $200,000 back to the general fund, if it even went back to the taxpayer, is 4 cents per thousand. So that's about a savings of $20 for over the year. So it is, better than nothing, but that's not having a substantial impact on residents of the town in any way. So I just don't want that to be oversold as something highly impactful. So anyway, thank you. No other remarks.
Just before I get to Jill, I lost my train of thought actually, on the beach enterprise. Oh, ironically, on staffing at the beach, which, I'm ready to put in for a job there, because it's one of the places that we need more staff in this environment. Ironically, that's the concern about spending a lot of money. So in this beach enterprise fund, I think, but if we're going to open it for our residents, we're going to have a lot of staff members there, because they're going to be checking people in, and there's going to be more, responsibility on them, because they're going to keep an eye on how many people are on the beach and what's going on. But I think the big thing with this conversation is it's a May 8th is really, you got to hope and pray that the order gets lifted May 8th on the stay at home. That meaning that when it expires, it doesn't get extended, because that's going to affect the beach, obviously. And that's why, as Steve said, there's not, we're kind of waiting on that. Ms. Lawler.
Yeah, I think we're going to end up spending a lot more on the beach, and Chief Corrigan might need to play a role in this. I don't know that we want to have our beach staff, which are made up of sometimes college and high school kids, wanting to address groups of people that might be too close together. All heard the comments that was made by the Providence mayor about social shaming, and I don't think that we want to have anything happen like that. So we might need to spend some money and have a police presence, maybe not uniform, but maybe the police that do the ticketing on cars at the beach. So certainly there'll be more money for that. And to echo what Matt said, we paid off Millbridge. That's great. That's going to be a revenue source coming in for us for the future, and just a great recreation spot for the town. So I'm really pleased about that.
Yes, and thank you for all your work in getting the URI folks over there. That's a revenue source for that.
So Matt,
Before I go down, everybody, I'm coming back, Ricky.
yep, that's fine.
I'm sorry, I'm a little tired. Steve Wright, I just have one question. And I think great job with the management funds. The management funds work very effectively. My first year on the council, I learned a lot about them. Glenna Hagopi, very knowledgeable about them. She was an excellent finance person on the council, and she was so helpful in helping me to understand how they work, because I don't have that background as much on the finance side. The 125 that Patrick's proposed, Steve, if we use that to bulk up the general fund balance for just this 1 year as a little more of a firewall, which would jump the fund balance 125,000, is that something that you have strong feelings about as the head of, as the beach manager? That's for Steve Wright.
Oh, Steve, you're muted.
I'm sorry. I think that's an excellent idea. It would not hurt the Beach Enterprise Fund for 1 year to bypass that. We're up to a healthy balance. I wouldn't want to stop that in future years, because we have a horrific storm like Hurricane Sandy. We want to be able to have that matching fund, but for this pandemic, we really need to have this money. So I think it's an excellent.
All right, great. So I'm going to circle back through the council on that specific point. If there's anything else you want to add, I think we've all spoken pretty much on the enterprise funds, but so I'm going to ask about that, the 125. But then if there's anything you really have heart pressing that you need to add, that's fine. So Mr. Lima, you seem to have something else you wanted to say. So
Yeah.
whatever that is, but then also weigh in on the 125, whether you think it should go to the beach replenishment or if it should stay in the general fund balance, right?
So, Chris, I just want to make sure that everybody understands the number. So the administration fee now that the beach will be paying will be how much? It's not just 200,000.
No, it's actually 10% of the, they're all paying a straight 10% across the board on all the administrative functions of the general fund budget. So as those numbers fluctuate, so does obviously the 10%. It's got, the town council, solicitor, human resources, the manager, the clerks, information resources, finance, all those, the budgets of all those things in the general fund. You come up to that total number, and then that's 10% on that.
Okay, so the beach could be contributing 300 and some thousand this year in administration?
Yes.
Yeah,
Okay.
what is that rough number?
That rough number is at the 10%, 342,872 for the beach.
Great, and that's a great accounting principle too, that you and Mr. Tierney put in terms of
Yeah.
that. No one had
sorry.
really thought of for 7 years, so I think that's wonderful. And I think
It's actually 371,579. I picked up the wrong line. I'm sorry.
that, I mean, I really want to make that we're clear that that's something, again, over the years, 7 years, when they brought that to my attention, I was very pleased. So that's this is the type of innovative thinking that we need, and that's coming from our town manager and our finance director. So thank you. Ricky.
So on the 125, this was something 4 years ago that the rec advisory board sat down and, you know, we were trying to review, especially after Hurricane Sandy, how would we sustain to be able to afford if we had something happen at the beach? And we came up with this 125 figure. Now, who knows when something's gonna happen, right? You just can't predict it. But we figured you better start a fund so that when we do, we're not jumping into the emergency funds of the town like they did for when they had to rebuild the North End cabanas and those lockers up there. They reached in pretty deep. So for me, I personally like to see these emergency funds. I like to see them built to the $1 million mark, if not more, because when something happens, we have to come up with 25%. It's nice that the government will step in, but with what's going on now, how much stepping in are they actually going to be able to do in the future? That's another thing that nobody's looking at. So for me, that 125,000, I don't think it hurts. I don't think it hurts to put it in there. I think that the enterprise fund is looking pretty good. Even if we only do 50% this year of what we did last year, we'll still be in a range of $1 million gross revenue, possibilities of being able to pay everybody and still come out with maybe $100,000 to $150,000. So I think we're pretty good. I think there's enough money to off balance whatever happens. So I'm about keeping the money right where it is. That's just my side of it. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Mr. Murray.
Yeah, Steve, I'm sorry, Chris,
Yes,
how you doing?
all right.
Okay, that 371, right? That doesn't include the 125, correct?
No,
Okay, so that would give us a total of 496.
right, but the 371 would come back to into the taxes revenue,
Right, okay,
right, for the budget.
okay, all right, so, all right, well, 125,000 if we don't, give that this year, it's saving 3 cents off the mill rate, so. I don't know, like I said before, we're kind of in a hurricane situation now. We got 625,000 in there. If that represents 25% of FEMA matching funds, then they would give us up to 2.5 million. Steve, the last time during, I guess it was Sandy, what do we end up getting from FEMA, if you know offhand?
I don't have that offhand, but all I know is Mr. Leem is correct. We had to borrow from the general fund to pay off for the North Pavilion renovation, if you remember
Sure.
then. And because we were almost at zero fund balance, that's why we couldn't match the money for FEMA at the time. So that's why, again, I believe it's a great idea to build that restricted receipt fund within the enterprise fund backup. Up to $1 million. But again,
I totally agree, but right now we got 625. If we had to give 25% to FEMA, that would get us 2.5 million. So you think 2.5 million would get us through the next storm in the event we had one?
difficult to say.
Okay, well, that's just throwing that out there, but yeah, I mean, we got a good start here. We'll continue the conversation. Thank you.
So Patrick, you want to put 125 toward, keep it in the general fund balance, not in the sand replenishment, correct? Okay. Jesse, where are you on that?
I'm for keeping it in the general fund.
So you're with Patrick's point of view?
Yeah, and I think Ricky was for that as well. I think.
No. Ricky wants to not put 125 to sand replenishment, and Patrick wants 125 more to go to the fund balance. So they have different points of view.
Yeah,
So do you
okay.
want 125 to go to replenishment, or do you want it to stay in the general fund balance? Which I call the firewall, but that's just an opinion. I mean, that's just, so, but.
Stay in the general fund balance.
You want it to go to general fund balance. Okay. All right. Jill.
And my question is to Steve. Steve, which is the way that you prefer? Makes sense in your department.
Well, I always thought the enterprise fund, the beach enterprise fund can handle itself this year. There is a concern that we're not going to be able to meet the general obligation within that because of what, I don't know what to expect this summer, when we start operating. There's an unknown there, but we have a healthy fund balance, and there's just too many unknowns at this time, but it really is. There's too many unknowns. I can't answer that.
So the general fund would be the way that you'd see the best fit?
Nobody said neither. Yeah.
Either way, we're going to be able to, we can take it out of the enterprise fund. So out of the fund balance would be protecting at least the back end, and it's always going to roll back into the enterprise fund, would it not? That's a question for Chris.
The 125 that's in there now would go back to the general fund balance.
But if we did not use it, could we not then put it into that?
It just increases it increases your fund balance as a reserve, correct?
If we did not use that, if we did not have to use that, could it go back into that restricted fund within the enterprise fund?
Correct.
Next cycle, though, it would have to be next cycle.
Exactly, after the audit, after the end of the year.
Right, you'd have to, in 2021, you'd say, you could even go 250 in 2021 for sand replenishment to if everything went beautifully this summer. Yeah, but we could go somewhere in the middle too. Jill, go ahead.
I think right now with the amount of unknowns that are out there, we don't know where we're going to need this money. So to have the most flexibility for Steve and his department is the way to go. So I guess that's if I have this right, that means keeping it in the general fund, the extra 125.
Okay, so it looks like there's consensus on that, Chris. So what we're going to do is instead of earmarking the 125 for sand replenishment, that's going to leave sand replenishment at 625. And I'm using the right term, correct? I don't have it in front of me.
Right. I think, yeah.
Yeah, okay. So that was going to go up to 750. We're actually going to increase the fund balance from 3.2 million to add that 125 in, right? So I want to make sure you have that.
Right, it's actually storm reserve. We call it storm reserve.
So it's going to go from storm reserve.
Yep, we're keeping it at
That's gonna go-
625.
Yeah.
And then that's gonna go back into the fund balance, right?
Okay, just writing this down. Okay. Now, again, just to clarify, we didn't save the taxpayers anything there, Patrick, on the mill rate. That just is within the fund. We're deciding, that we're gonna beef up the general fund. And I guess the thought process would be if there was disaster, there'd be a little more cushion than there is now. And that makes sense, I think.
Understood.
Yeah, so good suggestion. I'm sorry. So that wraps up the enterprise funds. It's a little after 8 o'clock. We have 4 more general categories. Capital, as you all know, is something that we spend quite a bit of time on. So we have capital, pension and OPEB, and then the special revenue funds, which you're familiar with, are things like the towers and Kinney Bungalow. And I do want to add, Chris, just one more. I want to confirm at the end of the next work session, just the school allocation number, because you briefly mentioned it, but we do have a duty to put that on the record and say what we're doing. So,
yes.
So right now, I think because capital is going to be an involved conversation, we're going to kind of have Chris start to run the numbers on these first 2 categories. Our next work session is Wednesday, the 13th at 6 p.m. If everyone's okay with stopping now, I'll just go down the list, but I think it kind of is a natural breaking point. I'm actually happy we got through enterprise funds. I wasn't expecting that. So is everyone okay with that? Rick?
You're muted, Rick.
I'm fine with, if you want to, continue this to another time.
Yeah, so we've already got the 13th scheduled. Okay, Patrick, is that good with you?
Yeah, all set.
All right, Jesse, good for you?
Yep.
Jill?
Yes.
All right, great. So our next work session will be on the budget on those, as I said, on those 4 general categories, starting with capital. So be ready just be ready to get into that conversation. And we'll and so that our work session will resume on May 13th, Wednesday, May 13th at 6 p.m. So have a great night, everybody. Thank you to all the department heads. Thank you for everybody. And for all the work that you've done in the budget, Chris, on the budget, really thank you. All right, have a great night, everybody.
Thank you, staff. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.